Music. Music before we begin. Let me ask you something. The next time you climb a staircase, any staircase at all, the one in your home, the one at your office, those worn stone steps of some old building you pass daily, I want you to count. Simply count the steps. And I promise you, somewhere within that simple act of counting, you will feel what I'm about to describe. You'll sense the absence before you fully understand it. Because here's what I've come to believe. After years of sifting through building codes, architectural treatises, and the strange marginalia of forgotten craftsmen, we have been taught to see staircases as neutral things. Functional. Boring. Merely a way to get from down here to up there. But tonight, I want to suggest that the staircase is one of the most quietly haunted objects in all of human architecture. And that haunting begins with a number, 13. Now, you already know where this is going, don't you? The moment you read the title, you felt it. A little shiver of recognition, because some part of you, some old, inherited part, already distrusts that number. And I want to spend the next while with you examining why. Not the easy answer. Not, oh, people are superstitious. I want the real thing, the buried thing. Let's start with something you can verify yourself today, without me. Go to almost any tall building constructed in the 20th century in the Western world. Step into the elevator. Look at the panel of buttons. Count them. In a staggering number of these buildings, you'll find the floors run 10, 11, 12, and then 14. The 13th floor simply isn't there. It was never numbered. The space exists. Of course it exists. You can't build a building with a hole punched through its middle. But the name of that floor was deliberately erased before the first tenant ever moved in. This isn't folklore. This is documented, observable, mundane fact. Otis Elevator, one of the largest manufacturers in the world, has acknowledged that a significant portion of the buildings they service skip the 13th floor entirely. City planners know it. Real estate developers know it. They'll tell you with a shrug that it's about resale value. People don't want to live on a floor named 13, so we just don't name it 13. But stop. Sit with that for a moment. We are talking about modern people. Rational people. People with smartphones and mortgages and engineering degrees. And these people collectively decided it was easier to lie about the structure of a building than to confront a number. We didn't reinforce the floor. We didn't bless it. We unnamed it. We performed a small act of architectural denial, and we did it so consistently across so many cities that it became invisible. Normal. Expected. Now, hold that thought. This habit we have of removing the 13th thing, because we're about to bring it down to the ground. Literally. We're going to bring it down to the steps beneath your feet. To understand the staircase, we have to understand why 13 frightens us. And to understand that, we have to go back much further than any building. You see, 12 is a number that behaves. 12 months. 12 hours on the clock face, twice over. 12 signs of the zodiac, 12 apostles, 12 tribes. Ancient peoples adored 12 because it divides so cleanly into halves, thirds, quarters, sits. It is a number that feels complete, ordered, finished. The ancient world built entire systems of time and meaning on the 12 precisely because it felt like a closed circle, a whole. And then comes 13. 13 is the step past completion. It is the guest who arrives after the table is set for 12. It is the apostle too many at the Last Supper. And you know which guest that 13th seat is associated within that tradition. 13 is the number that breaks the perfect circle. The one that adds one more when one more was not wanted. The Norse told a story of a banquet of 12 gods disrupted by an uninvited 13th, and the chaos and death that followed. Different cultures, the same shudder. 13 is transgression. It is the one too many. It is excess where there should have been rest. Now feel how that maps onto a staircase. A staircase is a journey from one completed place to another, from the ground to the destination. And the builders of old, the master masons and carpenters, whose knowledge was passed mouth to ear through guilds, rather than written in books, were profoundly superstitious people. Not stupid, superstitious, which is a different thing. They believed the act of building was a kind of negotiation with forces larger than themselves. Here's something genuinely true that most people never learn. Medieval and early modern builders, particularly within the guild traditions that would later feed into Freemasonry, embedded intention into their structures. Measurements were not merely practical. The ratios of a cathedral, the number of columns, the height of an arch, these were chosen with meaning. The building was a text. You could read it if you knew the language. And these builders had rules unwritten, mostly passed down. One of them, in various forms across various regions, concerned the counting of steps. There's a folk tradition that staircases in certain churches and grand homes were deliberately built with an odd number of steps, or a number that avoided 13, so that the climber would finish on the right foot. You began a climb with your right foot, and you wanted to arrive with your right foot, because the right was the favored side, the blessed side, the left, sinister in Latin, which is literally the word we get sinister from, was the unlucky side. So count it out. If you begin on the right and want to end on the right, you need a specific parity of steps. And a flight of 13, depending on how you stepped, could land you wrong, could land you sinister. So builders adjusted. They'd add a step, remove a step, break a long staircase into 2 flights with a landing in between. Anything to avoid delivering you to the top on the wrong foot, on the wrong number. That landing, that little pause partway up a grand staircase. You've stood on hundreds of them and never wondered why they're there. Sometimes it's structural. Sometimes it's about rest. But sometimes, it was placed there precisely to break a count that the builder did not want completed, to interrupt 13 before it could happen, to seal it off behind a flat little platform where your feet could reset. Do you see it now? Do you see how the absence hides in plain sight? The 13th step wasn't always removed in the dramatic sense. It was prevented. It was designed around. It was quietly refused before it could ever be built. I told you I'd been crawling through old building treatises, and I want to share the feeling of it with you, because it changed how I walk through the world. There's a moment when you study enough old structures, when the buildings start to confess to you, you begin to notice the lies. A staircase that turns for no structural reason. A landing that interrupts a perfectly good straight run. A flight of stairs in an old manor that has exactly 12 steps to the first landing and then resumes. Never 13 in a single uninterrupted run. Never that cursed number standing alone and complete. And you start to ask the buildings why. And the buildings, in their silent architectural language, answer, why we're afraid. That's the thing I most want you to take away from our time together. Not a conspiracy. Not a sealed government vault containing the forbidden 13th step. The truth is more intimate than that, and far more unsettling. The truth is that fear was built into the bones of our world. And we've been living inside that fear so long we stopped seeing it. Every skipped floor in an elevator, every interrupted staircase, every house number that jumps from 12 to 14, every airplane without a row 13, and yes, many airlines genuinely skip it. Every hospital without a room 13. These are not isolated quirks. They are the same gesture repeated millions of times by people who would each individually tell you they don't really believe in any of it. They don't really believe in it. And yet they built around it anyway. That's the sealed reason. The reason was sealed not in a vault, but in us. In the gap between what we claim to believe and what we actually do when we pour the concrete and number the floors. Now, a sharp listener, and I suspect you are, one might say, fine. So it's superstition dressed up. Old builders were afraid of a number. We know better now. Why does it persist? Why in the 21st century do we still skip the 13th floor? And this is where it gets genuinely profound. So stay with me. We persist because the absence has become more real than the thing it replaced. Let me explain what I mean. When the first builder skipped the 13th step, or the first developer skipped the 13th floor, they were responding to a fear. But once that absence existed, once everyone expected the 13th floor to be missing, a new logic took over. Now, if you include a 13th floor, you're not being brave or rational. You're being strange. You're the building that's different. You're calling attention to the very thing everyone agreed to look away from. You're breaking the silence. The skip became the norm. The lie became the standard. And the truth. A building that simply numbers its floors honestly, 1 through 14 with 13 right there in the middle, became the transgression. We flipped it. The absence is now the comfortable thing. And the presence is the disturbing thing. That's how superstition outlives belief. It stops being about whether you believe in the curse. It becomes about whether you're willing to be the one who breaks the pattern everyone else is maintaining. And almost nobody is willing to be that person. Not the developer who'd lose sales. Not the architect who'd field strange questions. Not the homeowner who'd feel a little prickle of unease every time they climbed past the count. They'd been taught to fear, so the 13th step stays sealed, not behind a door, behind consensus, behind the soft, total agreement of millions of people to never quite look at it directly. Let me bring this all the way home now to you, standing wherever you are, about to climb something tonight. I think the staircase is the perfect symbol for this whole human tendency because of what a staircase is. It's a thing you experience with your whole body. You don't observe a staircase from a distance the way you observe a painting. You enter it. You commit your weight to it. You trust each step to hold you before you've fully arrived on it. A staircase is an act of faith repeated in rapid succession, usually without a single conscious thought. And into that act of bodily faith, our ancestors smuggled their fear. They knew you wouldn't notice. They knew you'd be thinking about your day, your destination, the thing waiting at the top. They knew the count would happen below your awareness. And so that's exactly where they hid the thing they couldn't say out loud. In the count. In the rhythm. In the number of times your foot would fall before you arrived. The 13th step was removed or prevented or interrupted or unnamed. Not because anyone could prove a curse. It was removed because we are a species that would rather redesign reality than sit with our own unease. We would rather build a lie into a skyscraper than admit plainly, this number frightens me, and I don't entirely know why. And maybe, here's my provocation to you, the thing I most want you to chew on after we part. Maybe that's not even a flaw. Maybe that's just what it means to be a meaning-making creature in an indifferent universe. We can't help it. We pour our fears and our hopes into everything we touch. The cathedral, the skyscraper, the humble staircase in your home. They're all confessions. They're all carrying messages we didn't quite mean to send, written in stone and steel, and the simple arithmetic of steps. So here's what I'll leave you with tonight. When you climb your stairs, count them. And whatever number you find, 12, 14, 15, some odd parity that lands you on your favored foot. Understand that the number is not an accident. Somewhere in the long chain of decisions that led to those exact steps beneath your feet, there was a choice. Maybe conscious, maybe inherited so deeply that the builder didn't even know they were making it. but a choice about completion, about transgression, about which foot you'd arrive on, and what number you'd refuse to stand upon, alone and complete. The 13th step was real. It still is. It exists everywhere we decided it shouldn't, as a gap, a landing, a skip name, a turn in the staircase that had no structural reason to turn. The reason was never sealed in a vault. It was sealed in the oldest and most human place of all. It was sealed in the quiet space between what we know and what we feel. And every time you climb a flight of stairs and arrive safely at the top, without once wondering why the steps are numbered the way they are, that seal holds for one more day. Now go climb something. And this time,